Okay. All right. So initially, cloud was meant to save costs, right? So, but beneath the infrastructure and all that, there are complex set of hidden costs, transfer fees, and in general, the expense of cloud sprawl, right? So the unchecked proliferation of services. So the first step is to actually optimize your infrastructure, right? I mean, cloud companies, they thrive of the lack of optimization. So you want to make sure that the infrastructure you're going to put in is in a way where, so for example, say if it's a startup, right? Initially, when you grow it, you might have a lot of dynamic needs, and then, but the app grows linearly, you'll probably have your cloud cost growing exponentially, right? And then you end up in a situation where you have a lot of resources provisioned, but then none of them are actually being used. And then you, in a sense, leave the faucet running and a bunch of the resources are being wasted, right? So what could cloud be used for? So I mentioned small enterprises, but also large enterprises who might have like, you know, maybe a sales or maybe like a promotion. So basically, when you don't want to invest in hardware initially, you would want to make sure that you use cloud for that purposes, right? But ultimately, you are spending a lot of money as you scale your resources, and the cloud companies are getting wealthier and the billionaires are getting even more wealthier. So how can you rein in some of these costs, right? So the first thing you can think about is maybe the AI ML workloads, which when you bring in on-prem, you have more control, you can scale them more cost effectively, and then you can even run it in a more hybrid multi-cloud fashion, right? So if you have multiple environments, say one in cloud, one in on-prem, and so on, you should be able to set up either a Kubernetes cluster and these environments to be able to manage your resources. So what are some of the challenges? So things like lack of hardware knowledge and the initial hardware costs and the lack of the knowledge of cloud native tools and just harmoniously working together, right? So think of cloud as not a location, but rather an operating model. So no matter where you have your infrastructure, try to use similar processes and tools so it's homogeneous across the different environments. So by that, what I mean is, think about concepts like artifacts, where to store them, CI/CD pipelines, infrastructure as code, version controlling, how to design your app with a 12-factor app, and so on. So what this would look like is, say you pull an image from upstream, you build it, you push it to your own registry, and then maybe you'll test it using something like Vagrant, and then you'll deploy it using CDK, Terraform, and so on. And there are a couple of ways you can build these images, right? So you can either bake them, which is like a web or API specific artifact, or you can build a generic artifact, which you can then install while it's booting up, right? So the pipeline would look like you'd pull something from upstream, you'll build it, you'll push it to your internal registry, and then you'll pull that one again, and then you'll build your web and API specific artifacts, and then you'll push it back, right? And I'm not endorsing any of these tools. These are some of the popular ones available out there for things like image building, infrastructure testing, service discovery, storage, infrastructure code, CI/CD, and all these things, right? And try to think of your infrastructure as a cattle, more or less. So make sure things are clustered, primary, backup. Make sure you have, if something can be done in a clustered mode, you do that. Basically, don't have single points of failures. And also make sure your networking is segregated as well, right? So you have an air-gapped network, you'll have an ops network for maybe your Jenkins and dev services, and then maybe a public network for your apps like web, API, and so on. So even if you have multiple regions like you have here, you can have these different networks and environments, and then in the back end you can connect it using like a dark fiber link and so on, right? So the three broad categories I like to think about is when trying to implement something like this is the on-prem hardware knowledge, and think of cloud as an operating model, and using cloud native resources and rules across your environments, right? So am I saying, okay, shut down all your cloud and move out of it right now? Well, no. What I'm saying is think about it, go back and see what makes sense to you, and then migrate based on your costs and need. And that's my time. Thank you.